As Rachel reported in the last hour, we now have tapes of Republican Congressman Devin Nunes telling us what he really thinks, or at least telling Republican contributors what he thinks they really want to hear. One thing Devin Nunes felt he had to say to the Republican contributors gathered in Washington state to support the candidacy of Republican Cathy McMorris Rodgers was that, quote, sometimes you love the president's tweets, sometimes we cringe on the president's tweets. That is something that every Trump supporter I've ever spoken to in private admits to, cringing at some of the president's tweets. Devin Nunes did admit that it is criminal to collude with a foreign country or foreign nationals in an American campaign, but he seemed to identify a very narrow definition of criminal conduct.
Now, if somebody thinks that my campaign or Cathy's campaign is colluding with the Chinese or you name the country, it could happen. It would be a very bad thing if Cathy was getting secrets from the Portuguese, let's say, just because I'm Portuguese, my background. So Cathy was getting secret information from the Portuguese. May or may not be illegal, but ultimately, let's say the Portuguese came and brought her some stolen email. She decided to release those. Okay, now we have a crime, right? If somebody stole the email, maybe Cathy released it. Well, if that's the case, then that's criminal.
Because somebody stole the emails, gave them to Cathy, Cathy released them. Well, if that's the case, then that's criminal. No one is saying that that's the case with the Trump campaign. What if someone stole the emails, did not give them to Cathy, but gave them to someone else to release them to benefit Cathy? Devin Nunes and Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers lied to their contributors, just lied to them when they said that the reason they were not moving forward quickly with the impeachment of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in the House of Representatives is that the Senate would then have to immediately take up that impeachment trial after the House voted to impeach Rod Rosenstein. And the Senate trial of Rod Rosenstein would then prevent the Senate from confirming the president's choice for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh. That is an outright, absolute lie. The Senate would be under no timing obligation to take up a bill of impeachment sent over to the Senate for trial. The House of Representatives will never vote on impeaching Rod Rosenstein, and the Senate will never have an impeachment trial of Rod Rosenstein. But at Republican fundraisers, Republicans like Devin Nunes and Cathy McMorris Rodgers will probably continue to lie to their contributors who are hoping for an impeachment of Rod Rosenstein. Joining our discussion now, Jennifer Rubin, a conservative opinion writer for the Washington Post and an MSNBC contributor, and Jill Wine-Banks is back with us. And Jill, I wanted to get your legal reading of the way Devin Nunes described what he considered criminal collusion. If foreign power were to steal some emails and give them directly to a campaign, and the campaign were then to directly publicize those emails for the campaign's benefit, that would be collusion. That seems like a very narrow definition.
It is a narrow definition, and I also want to say we aren't using the word collusion anymore. I've started a hashtag, say this, not that, and we're going to be calling it criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States or criminal conspiracy to violate the election laws, because that's what it is. It's a much broader legal problem for the Republicans than Devin Nunes described. What he said is true. That is criminal. It would be criminal. But it's also criminal if you accept anything of value from a foreign individual or a foreign government, especially when it happens to be an enemy of our country, not a friend or ally. But you cannot accept anything, even from our closest allies, if it is a foreign person. So once you have, his description was of a Portuguese giving something to the candidate. It doesn't matter what country it is, you can't take it. Anything of value is barred by our election laws. And so there's a much broader thing, and it doesn't matter whether you publish it or you knowingly allow someone to publish it, or whether you just send an email that says, I love it, especially later in the summer, and then WikiLeaks publishes it later in the summer.
Jennifer Rubin, the notion that the Senate has to immediately take up bill of impeachment. The last time we saw an impeachment at this level was of a federal judge. 1988 in August, the House voted to impeach a federal judge. The Senate did not begin the trial until 14 months later in 1989, and then they did it part-time, a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there. Senate business was never interrupted by that impeachment.
It's like all these Republicans went to the same bad law school, and they never picked up the Constitution, and they know nothing about their jobs, because what they say is essentially nonsense. Jill is right. First of all, that's entirely wrong. Secondly, as Jill was saying, this criminal conspiracy is a broader issue, and what is illegal is to also solicit something of value, which is arguably what Donald Trump Jr. was doing when he said, "I love it." So really, all of their legal beeswax is nonsense. I will say this. I think it's a big political embarrassment once again for Paul Ryan, who has left an unserious, irresponsible person in Devin Nunes in a very important job as head of the House Intelligence Committee. And now we have Kathy McMorris Rodgers, who is the number 4 person, doing very badly, by the way, in her primary, who is sitting there like a lump in the log as this guy goes on waxing about how his primary job is to protect the president, not to do his job. These people look like stooges. They look like they have indulged a character like Devin Nunes, and they haven't done their job. And if there's ever a better reason to get rid of Paul Ryan's party, it's this. They exercise no responsibility. It's always about the party, always about protecting the president, never about doing their constitutional obligation. So my takeaway from this is primarily political, that these people really are irredeemable. And if you want an effective constitutional check on the president of the United States, you're going to have to change parties.
Well, that is exactly what they seem to be worried. I want to play one more part of this where Devin Nunes says we're the only ones. It sounds to me like he's saying you've got to elect Republicans or we're going to have an impeachment of the president. Let's listen to this.
So therein lies, so it's like your classic catch-22 situation where, I mean, we're at this what puts us in such a tough spot. If Sessions won't unrecuse and Mueller won't clear the president, we're the only ones, which is really the danger. That's why I keep, and thank you for saying it, by the way. I mean, we have to keep all these things. We have to keep the majority. If we do not keep the majority, all of this goes away.
Jill, that sounded to me like if we don't keep the majority, the president gets impeached.
Well, it sounds to me like if we don't keep the majority, the truth will come out and we will know what's happening. And that's what he's worried about and what I think Americans should want to happen. We want to know the truth and we see the truth. It's right in front of our eyes. So when are Republicans going to realize that when they give speeches in fundraisers, they're being recorded and they're making mistakes?
I think tonight.
Right.
I think tonight is when they're going to realize that. We're going to have to take a break in here. Jennifer Rubin, Jill Wine-Banks, I think the Republicans might just figure that out. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.